The blood-red sunset cast long shadows across the Sierra Nevada as Catherine Nelson stared at her broken wagon wheel. Tears of frustration threatening to spill down her dust-covered cheeks. She had been so close just 3 more days to Sacramento when the wheel had shattered against a hidden boulder, leaving her stranded on this desolate mountain pass with night approaching and not another soul for miles. The year was 1851, and the California gold rush had drawn thousands westward, including Catherine. At 22, she had left behind everything familiar in Boston after her parents' deaths, determined to claim her uncle's successful dry goods store in Sacramento before distant cousins could contest the will. Now, that inheritance her future seemed as broken as her wagon wheel. "Should have listened to those folks back in Carson City," she muttered, kicking at the splintered wood. "Telling me no woman should make this crossing alone." She adjusted her bonnet, which had slipped askew in her frustration, and surveyed her predicament with growing despair. Her mare, Penny, nickered softly from where she was tethered to a nearby pine tree, seemingly unimpressed by their dilemma. The wagon listed dangerously to one side, its contents everything Catherine owned in the world threatening to spill across the rocky ground. "We'll figure something out," Catherine assured the horse, though she had no idea what that something might be. Repairing a wheel required tools she didn't possess and skills she'd never learned. With the sun sinking lower, she'd have to make camp and hope morning brought better fortune. She was laying out her bedroll when the sound of hoofbeats echoed through the trees. Catherine's hand flew to the small pistol tucked in her pocket, a parting gift from her father that she prayed she'd never need to use. A tall figure on horseback emerged from the shadow of the pines. The stranger paused, silhouetted against the crimson sky before nudging his mount forward. "Evening, madam," he called, his voice carrying a hint of southern drawl. "Looks like you've got yourself a bit of trouble." As he approached, Catherine could make out his features, a strong jaw darkened by stubble, keen eyes beneath the brim of a well-worn Stetson, and shoulders broad enough to suggest he was no stranger to hard work. "The wheel broke," she replied, stating the obvious while keeping her hand near her pistol. "Hit a rock I didn't see until it was too late." The stranger dismounted with fluid grace, landing softly despite his tall frame. He tipped his hat back, revealing dark brown hair that curled slightly at his temples. "Samuel Sutton," he introduced himself. "Most folks call me Sam." "Catherine Nelson," she replied cautiously. Sam approached the wagon and crouched beside the broken wheel, his experienced eyes assessing the damage. "This is quite a mess, Miss Nelson. You traveling alone?" Catherine hesitated, wondering if admitting her solitude was wise, but something in his steady gaze prompted honesty. "Yes. My uncle in Sacramento passed away. I'm going to claim his store before it's too late." Sam nodded, running a hand along the splintered wood. "Bold journey for a woman alone." "Necessity, Mr. Sutton, not boldness," Catherine replied, lifting her chin slightly. A half-smile tugged at his lips. "Fair enough." He stood, brushing dust from his hands. "I can fix this. Got some tools and spare parts with my horse, but it'll take a few hours and we've not got much daylight left." Relief washed over Catherine, quickly followed by suspicion. "That's very kind, but I've nothing to pay you with right now." "Wasn't asking for payment," Sam said, already walking back to his horse. "Just seems the proper thing to do." As he retrieved his saddlebags, Catherine studied him more carefully. His clothes were worn but clean, his movements purposeful and confident. He wore a gun at his hip like most men in these territories, but there was nothing threatening in his manner. "Why would you help a stranger?" she asked as he returned with tools and what appeared to be parts of a wheel. Sam knelt beside the broken wheel again, beginning to work as he spoke. "My pa taught me never to pass by someone in trouble, especially not out here." He glanced up at her. "These mountains don't care if you're a man, woman, or child. They'll kill you just the same if you're unprepared." Catherine watched as his capable hands began dismantling what remained of the wheel. "Are you a wheelwright?" A chuckle escaped him. "No, madam, just a cowboy who's had his share of broken wagons. Worked a cattle drive from Texas last year and stayed on at a ranch near Shafter." heading back now after delivering some horses to a buyer in Carson City. As darkness descended, Sam built a small fire and continued working by its light. Catherine prepared a simple meal from her provisions: beans, hardtack, and coffee, insisting he share it as partial payment for his help. They ate in companionable silence for a while, the crackling fire and distant howl of coyotes the only sounds breaking the mountain stillness. "What's in Sacramento?" Sam finally asked, setting aside his empty plate. "Besides your uncle's store, I mean." Catherine stared into the flames. "A chance," she said softly. "My parents died of fever last winter. There's nothing left for me in Boston. Uncle William's store is successful. With it, I can build a life of my own choosing." Sam nodded thoughtfully. "That's worth traveling for." He returned to his work, and Catherine wrapped herself in a blanket against the growing chill. Despite her intention to remain vigilant, exhaustion soon overcame her wariness. When she woke, dawn was breaking over the mountains, painting the sky in delicate pinks and golds. Sam was already up, tightening the final bolts on a completely restored wheel. "You fixed it," Catherine exclaimed, hurrying over to inspect his handiwork. "Good as new," Sam confirmed, straightening with a wince that suggested he'd spent most of the night on the task. "Better, actually." The wood on that old one was starting to rot. Catherine ran her fingers over the smooth new wheel. "I don't know how to thank you, Mr. Sutton." "Sam," he corrected, then gazed down the mountain pass toward the western valleys. "Actually, I've been thinking. The trail ahead gets tricky in places. There are some unsavory types about too, if you wouldn't mind the company." He paused, suddenly seeming less certain than he had all night. "I'll follow you down to Sacramento. Make sure you get there safely." Catherine studied him, this stranger who had worked through the night to help her. Common sense warned against trusting too easily, but something deeper intuition perhaps told her Sam Sutton was a rare kind of man. "I'd welcome the company," she said finally. "But I won't have you thinking I need protection. I've managed this far on my own." A smile spread across Sam's face, warm and genuine. "Wouldn't dream of suggesting otherwise, Miss Nelson. Consider me just a traveling companion with a vested interest in seeing my handiwork make it to Sacramento without further incident." They broke camp quickly, loading Catherine's belongings back into the wagon. As they prepared to depart, Catherine caught Sam watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "Something wrong?" she asked. He shook his head. "Just thinking it's been a while since I've had any particular destination in mind. It's a good feeling." Catherine climbed onto the wagon seat and took up the reins, feeling a strange flutter in her chest at his words. "Well then, Mr. Sutton Sam, shall we see what awaits us down the mountain?" He mounted his horse, a sturdy pinto gelding, and tipped his hat. "After you, Miss Nelson." They set off as the sun cleared the eastern peaks, casting golden light across the rugged landscape. Catherine couldn't help wondering what other surprises these mountains might hold for her, and what would happen when they reached Sacramento. The trail leading down from the Sierra Nevada wound through dense forests and along precipitous ridges that made Catherine's breath catch whenever she glanced toward the edge. Sam rode slightly ahead, occasionally raising a hand to signal a difficult stretch or directing her toward an easier path. By midday, they had descended enough that the air grew warmer, the pines giving way to more scattered woodlands. They stopped beside a clear mountain stream to rest the animals and eat a simple lunch of jerky and dried apples from Catherine's supplies. "You're a capable driver," Sam commented as he refilled their canteens. "Most Easterners I've met can barely handle a horse in these conditions." Catherine smiled, pleased by the compliment. "My father taught me. He believed women should know such things, even if Boston society disagreed." She looked out over the valley spreading below them. "He would have loved this journey. Your father sounds like an unusual man. He was a merchant who traveled extensively. My mother said he had wanderlust in his blood." Her expression softened with memory. "He brought back stories from everywhere he went. I grew up hearing about mountains like these long before I ever saw them." Sam settled beside her on a fallen log. "Is that why you're making this journey alone? The wanderlust?" Catherine considered the question. "Partly, perhaps. But mostly necessity, as I said. The cousins contesting the will gave me little choice. She glanced at him. What about you? What draws a Texas cowboy to California? A shadow crossed Sam's face. Change, I suppose. Texas holds difficult memories. Catherine sensed she'd touched on something painful and didn't press further. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Sam spoke again. We should reach the foothills by evening. There's a small settlement there where we can rest properly. Wagon travels easier once we hit the valley. They continued their journey through the afternoon, the landscape gradually transitioning from rocky slopes to gentler terrain. Catherine found herself watching Sam more often than was proper, admiring the easy way he sat his horse and how he constantly scanned their surroundings, alert to any potential danger. The settlement Sam had mentioned turned out to be little more than a cluster of buildings serving travelers and prospectors, a general store, a stable, and a small inn that doubled as a saloon. A faded sign proclaimed it as Miner's Rest. Not exactly Sacramento, Sam said with a wry smile as they approached, but the beds are clean and the food's hot. The stable master took charge of their animals while Sam helped Catherine down from her wagon. His hands lingered at her waist for just a moment longer than necessary, sending an unexpected warmth through her despite her dusty exhaustion. "Thank you," she murmured, suddenly aware of how close they stood. Sam cleared his throat and stepped back. "Let's get you settled." The inn's proprietor, a stout woman named Mrs. Holloway, looked Catherine up and down with undisguised curiosity. "Don't see many unaccompanied ladies out this way," she remarked, her tone somewhere between disapproval and admiration. "My wife has had a long journey," Sam said smoothly before Catherine could respond. "We'd appreciate your finest room." Catherine's eyes widened, but she managed to keep her composure as Mrs. Holloway's expression immediately softened. "Of course, Mr. Sutton, Sam Sutton. And this is Catherine. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Sutton, I've got just the place for you. Dinner's served until 7. When Mrs. Holloway bustled away to prepare their room, Catherine turned to Sam with raised eyebrows. "Wife," she whispered. Sam had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Apologies, Miss Nelson. You'll be treated with more respect as a married woman. Places like this can be rough on single ladies." He lowered his voice further. "I'll take the floor, of course." Catherine knew she should be offended by his presumption, but she couldn't deny the practicality of his thinking. Her reputation was already compromised by traveling alone with him. What difference would sharing a room make at this point? "Very well, Mr. Sutton. But if you snore, I shall be most displeased." A grin broke across his face, transforming his weathered features. "Yes, madam." Their room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the dusty main street. After days on the trail, the prospect of washing away the dust and sleeping on something other than hard ground seemed like unimaginable luxury to Catherine. "I'll leave you to freshen up," Sam said, placing her small trunk inside the door. "Meet you downstairs for dinner." After he left, Catherine poured water into the basin and washed as thoroughly as possible, changing into her second-best dress, a deep blue cotton that had miraculously survived the journey without excessive wrinkling. She brushed her honey-brown hair until it shone, pinning it into a simple but neat arrangement. The modest improvements to her appearance had an unexpected effect on Sam when she joined him downstairs. He stood as she approached their table, his eyes widening appreciatively. "You look lovely, Miss Nelson," he said softly. "Catherine," she corrected him with a small smile. "If we're playing at marriage, you should use my given name." The dining room was crowded with an assortment of miners, travelers, and what Catherine suspected were professional gamblers. She felt eyes upon them as they ate, but Sam's presence beside her kept unwanted attention at bay. Over a surprisingly decent meal of beef stew and fresh bread, Sam told her more about his life in Texas, working cattle on his family's small ranch near a town called Shafter. "My father built something from nothing," he said with quiet pride. "Started with just 10 head of cattle after the war with Mexico. By the time I was grown, we had one of the most respected herds in the county." "Is your family still there?" Catherine asked. Sam's expression clouded. "No. There was trouble. "Arrange war with a larger outfit. My father and older brother were killed." He stared down at his plate. "I managed the ranch for a while afterward, but without them, it wasn't the same. Sold it last year and took to droving cattle." "I'm so sorry," Catherine said, resisting the urge to reach for his hand. "I understand how losing family changes everything." Their eyes met across the table, a moment of shared understanding passing between them. For the first time since leaving Boston, Catherine felt truly seen by another person. The moment was broken when a boisterous group entered the dining room. From their loud conversation, Catherine gathered they were prospectors who'd had some success in the hills and were celebrating accordingly. "Let's get some air," Sam suggested, noticing her discomfort as the men grew rowdier. They stepped out onto the small porch fronting the inn. Night had fallen completely, and stars glittered above them in a vast canopy. The air was cool but not cold, carrying the scent of pine and distant wood smoke. "It's beautiful," Catherine said, gazing upward. "I've never seen so many stars." "One advantage of the wild places," Sam agreed, leaning against the porch railing beside her. "No city lights to dim them." They stood in companionable silence, shoulders almost touching. Catherine was acutely aware of his presence beside her, solid, reassuring, yet increasingly unsettling in ways she hadn't anticipated when accepting his help. "Why are you really accompanying me to Sacramento, Sam?" she asked suddenly. "You could have fixed my wheel and continued on your way." He didn't answer immediately, seeming to weigh his words carefully. "Truthfully, I'm not entirely sure myself." His voice was low, private in the darkness. "Something told me I should. That's not much of an answer, I know." "Actually, it might be the most honest answer I've heard in a long time." Catherine turned to face him. "Most men would have invented some noble reason." Sam's lips curved into a half-smile. "Never been much good at invention. My brother used to say I was painfully straightforward." "I find it refreshing." Their eyes held in the dim light spilling from the inn's windows. Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition, perhaps, of possibilities neither had anticipated. A burst of raucous laughter from inside broke the spell. Sam straightened, clearing his throat. "We should rest. Early start tomorrow if we want to make good time." Back in their room, Sam made a pallet on the floor using extra blankets Mrs. Holloway had provided, insisting Catherine take the bed. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded Catherine as she lay listening to Sam's steady breathing in the darkness, wondering what Sacramento would bring, and why the thought of reaching their destination now filled her with such conflicted feelings. Dawn broke with the sound of wagons and pack mules departing the settlement. Catherine woke to find Sam already gone, a note explaining he'd gone to check on their transportation resting on the washstand. She dressed quickly in her practical traveling clothes and packed her few belongings before heading downstairs. Mrs. Holloway provided a hearty breakfast of flapjacks and coffee, watching Catherine with knowing eyes that made her uncomfortable. "Your husband's a good man," the innkeeper remarked. "Can tell by how he looks at you." Catherine nearly choked on her coffee. "We haven't been married long," she managed to say, hoping the lie wouldn't be too obvious. "Newlyweds, eh? Thought as much. There's a certain way about you both." Mrs. Holloway smiled. "Hold on to him, dearie. Men like that are rare in these parts." Catherine was spared further conversation by Sam's arrival. He looked refreshed, his dark hair still damp from washing, his face cleanly shaven. "Ready to continue our journey, Mrs. Sutton?" he asked with a glint of amusement in his eyes. "Indeed, husband," Catherine replied sweetly, enjoying the flash of surprise on his face at her easy participation in their charade. They departed shortly after, the wagon rolling smoothly on its repaired wheel. The terrain flattened as they descended further, transitioning to the Sacramento Valley with its scattered oak trees and stretches of golden grass. In the distance, the snowy peaks of the Sierra Nevada gleamed in the morning sun, making Catherine marvel at how far they'd come. "Should reach Sacramento by tomorrow afternoon if we make good time," Sam said, riding alongside the wagon. Catherine nodded, trying to ignore the twinge of regret his words provoked. "What will you do once we arrive?" he shrugged. "Haven't decided yet." Might look for work at one of the ranches outside the city. California's growing fast with the gold rush. Always need for men who know cattle. They traveled steadily through the day, stopping occasionally to rest the animals and stretch their legs. The easy companionship they'd established continued, their conversations ranging from childhood memories to books they'd read to their hopes for the future. "I plan to expand the store," Catherine explained as they shared a simple lunch beneath an oak tree. Uncle William's letters mentioned the demand for quality goods is insatiable with so many people arriving daily. "I've connections with suppliers in Boston who can provide items others can't get." "Sounds like you've thought it through carefully," Sam observed. "I have little choice but to succeed," she said with determination. "It's my one chance at independence." Sam studied her thoughtfully. "You're not what I expected when I found you with that broken wheel." "What did you expect? A damsel in distress, I suppose." He smiled ruefully. "Instead, I found a woman with more grit than most men I know." Catherine felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "Necessity breeds capability, Mr. Sutton." As evening approached, they found a suitable camping spot near a small creek. The routine they established the previous night continued naturally, Sam tending to the horses while Catherine prepared their meal, then both working together to set up camp. After eating, they sat beside the fire, watching the flames dance in the gathering darkness. The night was warmer here in the valley, the air fragrant with wild grasses and blooming flowers. "Tell me about your uncle's store," Sam said, breaking a comfortable silence. "What sort of goods does it sell?" "Everything from practical necessities to small luxuries," Catherine replied. "Tools, fabric, foodstuffs, household items. Uncle William prided himself on having whatever people needed." She smiled at a memory. His letters were full of stories about customers. He seemed to know everyone in Sacramento and their business. Sounds like a good man. He was. "After my mother his sister married, they didn't see each other often, but he always remembered my birthdays with unusual gifts. A music box that played 3 different tunes, a kaleidoscope, books about far-off places." Her voice softened. "When my parents died, he wrote offering me a home and purpose. I was preparing to travel when news came of his death." "I'm sorry you didn't get to see him again." Catherine nodded, blinking back unexpected tears. "The lawyer handling his estate warns that my cousins will contest the will vigorously. They believe a woman has no business inheriting a commercial enterprise." "What do you know of running a store?" Sam asked, not unkindly, more than they might expect. "I kept my father's books for years and helped manage household purchases. The principles aren't so different." She looked up at him, determination in her gaze. "I'm a quick learner and I have no alternative." Sam studied her across the firelight, his expression thoughtful. "I believe you'll succeed, Catherine Nelson. You've got the kind of strength that matters out here." His confidence warmed her more than the fire. "Thank you, Sam." The night deepened around them, countless stars emerging overhead. Neither seemed inclined to seek sleep yet, both perhaps aware that their journey together was nearing its end. "Would you tell me what really happened in Texas?" Catherine asked quietly. "I sense there's more to your story." Sam was silent for so long that Catherine thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, colored by old pain. "The range war I mentioned, it wasn't just about grazing rights, though that's what everyone called it. Nathan Blackwood owned the largest ranch in the county. He wanted our water access and the prime grazing land my father had worked for decades to improve." He poked at the fire, sending sparks spiraling upward. "When my father refused to sell, accidents started happening. Cattle found dead, fences cut, nothing that could be proven." "That's terrible," Catherine said softly. Sam nodded grimly. "It came to a head when someone set fire to our south pasture during a dry spell. My father and brother rode out to stop it from reaching the house. They never came back." His jaw tightened. "Blackwood's men claimed they'd found them already dead when they came to help fight the fire, said it must have been rustlers. You didn't believe that?" "Not for a second, but I couldn't prove otherwise." His hands clenched into fists. "The sheriff was in Blackwood's pocket, no investigation. No justice?" "What did you do?" Sam's expression darkened. Something I'm not proud of. I waited for Blackwood outside the saloon one night and confronted him. Things got heated. I drew on him. Catherine's eyes widened. Did you? No. His foreman knocked my arm as I fired. Bullet hit the building, but in Texas, drawing on a man like Blackwood. He shook his head. I had a choice: stand trial for attempted murder with a corrupt sheriff and judge, or leave everything behind. So you left Shafter, Catherine concluded quietly. With nothing but my horse and what I could carry. A muscle worked in his jaw. Blackwood got what he wanted in the end, bought our land at auction for a fraction of its worth. Catherine reached across the space between them and placed her hand on his arm. I'm so sorry, Sam. He covered her hand with his own, the simple touch conveying more than words could. For a long moment they stayed that way, connected in shared understanding of loss and forced beginnings. When Catherine finally withdrew her hand, the absence of his warmth left her feeling strangely bereft. We should get some rest, she said reluctantly. Sam nodded, rising to check on the horses one last time before settling onto his bedroll across the fire from her. Good night, Catherine, he said softly. Good night, Sam. Sleep came more slowly than it should have after their long day of travel. Catherine found herself watching Sam's silhouette across the dying fire, wondering about the path that had brought them together and where their paths might lead after tomorrow. They broke camp at first light, both unusually quiet as they prepared for the final leg of their journey. The road widened as they progressed, evidence of increasing traffic to and from Sacramento. They passed other travelers' freight wagons loaded with supplies, prospectors heading to the gold fields, families seeking new beginnings. By mid-afternoon, the first outskirts of Sacramento came into view, scattered buildings giving way to more densely packed structures as they approached the heart of the rapidly growing city. Catherine felt a jumble of emotions as they entered the bustling streets, excitement at reaching her destination, anxiety about the challenges ahead, and an unexpected sadness that her time with Sam was drawing to a close. You know where your uncle's store is located? Sam asked as he guided them through the crowded thoroughfare. Catherine nodded, retrieving a folded paper from her pocket. Front Street, near the riverfront. Mr. Peterson, the lawyer, provided directions. They navigated the busy streets, passing saloons, hotels, and businesses of all descriptions. Sacramento hummed with the energy of a boomtown, dusty and chaotic yet vibrant with possibility. When they finally turned onto Front Street, Catherine's heart began to race. This was it, her inheritance, her future. The street was lined with commercial establishments serving the constant flow of miners and settlers. There, Sam said, pointing to a two-story building with a wide storefront. A sign reading Nelson's General Merchandise hung above the entrance. Catherine stared at it, momentarily overwhelmed. The building was larger than she'd envisioned from her uncle's letters, with large display windows currently covered by heavy curtains. Sam brought the wagon to a stop in front of the store. For a moment, neither moved. We made it, Catherine said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Sam nodded, his expression unreadable. We did. He climbed down and came around to help her from the wagon. As his hands circled her waist to lift her down, their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition that something significant was ending before it had truly begun. Thank you, Sam, Catherine said as her feet touched the ground, his hands lingering at her waist. For everything. Before he could respond, the store's door opened and a balding man in spectacles emerged, looking at them curiously. Miss Nelson, he inquired, approaching with hand extended. I'm Harold Peterson, your uncle's attorney. We've been corresponding. He glanced at Sam with undisguised suspicion. I wasn't aware you were traveling with a companion. Mr. Peterson, yes. This is Samuel Sutton. He's been kind enough to escort me from the mountains after my wagon broke down. I would not have made it without his assistance. Peterson's expression remained skeptical, but he offered Sam a curt nod. Then the lady owes you her gratitude, sir, as do I for delivering her safely. Sam tipped his hat politely. It was my pleasure. Well, Miss Nelson, shall we go inside? There's much to discuss about your inheritance, and I'm afraid some matters have become rather urgent during your journey. Catherine hesitated, turning back to Sam. Will you come in? He shook his head, stepping back toward his horse. I should find accommodation for the night. Get your wagon and mare settled properly. Oh yes, of course. Catherine tried to hide her disappointment. Where will you be staying, in case I need to? That is, if you need payment for your services. The River Inn, most likely, Sam replied, but there's no need for payment, Miss Nelson. As I said before, it was my pleasure. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat impatiently. Miss Nelson, we really must discuss these matters without delay. Your cousins have been most persistent in their claims. Catherine nodded reluctantly. Of course, I'll be right there. When Peterson retreated inside, she turned back to Sam, suddenly uncertain what to say. Will I see you again before you leave Sacramento? Something flickered in Sam's eyes, regret perhaps, or resignation. If you wish it. I do, she said, more forcefully than she intended. A small smile touched his lips. Then you will. He mounted his horse with practiced ease. Good luck with your inheritance, Catherine. She watched him ride away, leading her wagon toward the livery stable further down the street. Only when he disappeared from view did she finally turn and enter her uncle's store, stepping into her new life with a strange heaviness in her heart. The interior of Nelson's general merchandise was dark and musty from being closed since William Nelson's death. As Peterson lit oil lamps, Catherine could see the store was well stocked but showing signs of neglect, dust coating the counters and merchandise haphazardly arranged. Your uncle was meticulous in his will, Peterson explained, leading her to a small office at the rear. He left everything to you, the store, the inventory, and the living quarters upstairs. He was most specific that his nephews were to receive only nominal bequests, which explains their objections, Catherine surmised, taking a seat across from the cluttered desk. Indeed. Thomas and Edgar Nelson have filed formal challenges to the will, claiming undue influence and questioning your ability to manage the business as an unmarried woman. Peterson peered at her over his spectacles. They're quite determined. As am I, Mr. Peterson, he nodded approvingly. Good. You'll need that determination. The hearing is set for next week before Judge Wilson. Your cousins have engaged Herbert Whitmore, a rather formidable attorney. They spent the next hour discussing legal strategies and the state of the business. Despite having been closed for nearly 2 months, the store remained financially sound thanks to William's prudent management. There's one other matter, Peterson said as their meeting concluded. Your living arrangements. The apartment above the store is comfortable but has been unoccupied since your uncle's passing. I've arranged for Mrs. Findlay, the widow who cleaned for your uncle, to prepare it for you. She should arrive tomorrow morning. Thank you, I can manage for tonight. After Peterson departed, Catherine explored her inheritance alone. The store was impressively comprehensive, carrying everything from mining equipment to fine china. The attached warehouse held additional stock and supplies. Upstairs, she found a surprisingly spacious apartment with a parlor, kitchen, bedroom, and small study. Though dusty and stale from disuse, it showed signs of her uncle's refined taste quality furniture, a well-stocked bookcase, even a small piano in the corner of the parlor. Catherine opened windows to admit fresh air, feeling both exhilarated and overwhelmed by her new circumstances. She was unpacking her trunk when a knock at the store's rear entrance startled her. Cautiously descending the stairs, she called, "Who is it?" "Sam Sutton, madam," came the familiar voice. Catherine hurried to unlock the door, surprised but pleased to find Sam standing there, her mare's reins in one hand and a small crate in the other. "Your horse and belongings from the wagon," he explained. "Thought you might need them tonight. The rest is stored at the livery stable until you're ready for it." "That's very thoughtful. Please come in." Catherine stepped aside, suddenly conscious of her disheveled appearance after hours of exploration and cleaning. Sam entered hesitantly, setting the crate down just inside the door. "Impressive establishment your uncle built," he observed, looking around the storeroom. "It is, isn't it? Far larger than I expected." Catherine led him through to the main store area. "I can scarcely believe it's mine now. If your cousins don't succeed in their challenge," Sam noted. "You overheard," Couldn't help it, your lawyer speaks rather loudly. He turned to face her directly. Will you be all right here alone tonight? This area gets rough after dark. The concern in his voice touched her. I'll be fine, the doors are solid and I have my father's pistol. Sam didn't look convinced. At least let me check the locks before I go. While he secured the building, Catherine struggled with conflicting emotions. She'd achieved her goal, reached Sacramento, and claimed her inheritance, yet the prospect of Sam walking out the door left her feeling strangely bereft. All secure, Sam reported, returning to where she waited by the counter. You should be safe enough. Thank you. Catherine hesitated, then asked impulsively, would you join me for dinner tomorrow? Here, I mean, as thanks for your help. He studied her face for a long moment. Are you sure that's wise? Sacramento's a small city in some ways, people talk. I don't care what people say, she replied with more conviction than she felt. You're the only friend I have here, Sam. Something in his expression softened. Then I accept your invitation. What time shall I arrive? They arranged for him to return at 6 the following evening. As Catherine showed him out, their hands brushed briefly, sending an unexpected jolt through her. Good night, Catherine, he said softly. Good night, Sam. After he left, Catherine leaned against the closed door, her heart racing inexplicably. This strange attraction to a man she barely knew was impractical, possibly even foolish given her precarious situation. Yet she couldn't deny the anticipation she felt at the thought of seeing him again. The next day passed in a flurry of activity. Mrs. Findlay, a bustling, efficient woman in her 50s, arrived early to help clean the apartment and store. Under her guidance, Catherine began to transform the neglected space back into a functioning business. Your uncle was a good man, Mrs. Findlay remarked as they worked. Fair to his customers, generous to those in need. This town mourned him proper. How did he die? Catherine asked, realizing she knew only that his death had been unexpected. His heart gave out, right here in the store serving a customer. Mrs. Findlay shook her head sadly. Doctors said it was quick, at least. He wouldn't have suffered long. By mid-afternoon, the store was presentable, and Catherine had begun an inventory of the merchandise. Mr. Peterson stopped by with additional paperwork and news that her cousins had arrived in town. Thomas and Edgar are staying at the Capitol Hotel, he informed her. They've requested a meeting with you before the hearing. To what purpose? They'll propose a settlement, no doubt, offer to buy you out for less than the business is worth. Peterson's expression was grave. They have connections here, Miss Nelson, business associates who may make things difficult if you refuse them. I didn't come all this way to surrender at the first challenge, Mr. Peterson. He nodded approvingly. Your uncle said you had his sister's backbone. I'm beginning to see it myself. After Peterson left, Catherine focused on preparing for dinner with Sam. She found her uncle's kitchen well supplied with basic staples, and Mrs. Findlay had brought fresh bread and vegetables. A trip to the butcher provided a small roast, and Catherine spent the late afternoon cooking a proper meal for the first time since leaving Boston. At precisely 6 o'clock, a knock sounded at the store's front door. Catherine smoothed her dress, her best one, saved for this occasion, and went to answer it. Sam stood on the threshold, hat in hand, looking almost unrecognizable. Gone was the trail-worn cowboy. In his place stood a gentleman in a clean, pressed suit, his dark hair neatly combed, his face freshly shaven. Only his eyes remained the same warm, intelligent, with that hint of sadness she'd noticed from the beginning. You look different, Catherine said, momentarily flustered. A smile tugged at his lips. Is that good or bad? Just unexpected. Please come in. She led him upstairs to the apartment where she'd set the small dining table with her uncle's china and silver. Candles glowed softly in the gathering dusk, casting a warm light over the room. This is quite a change from beans by the campfire, Sam observed, looking around appreciatively. I wanted to thank you properly, Catherine replied, suddenly self-conscious under his steady gaze. Dinner proved more relaxed than she'd feared. The easy companionship they'd established during their journey returned as they shared the meal and conversation. Sam told stories of his cattle-driving days that made her laugh, while Catherine described her plans for expanding the store. "You've thought this through carefully," Sam remarked as they finished the apple pie Mrs. Findlay had provided for dessert. "I have little choice but to succeed," Catherine replied, echoing her words from days earlier. After dinner, they moved to the parlor where Catherine served coffee. The small apartment felt intimately cozy with just the two of them, the sounds of the busy street below muffled by the closed windows. "Have you decided how long you'll stay in Sacramento?" Catherine asked, trying to keep her tone casual. Sam studied his coffee cup thoughtfully. "I haven't made any firm plans yet. Thought I might look around, see what opportunities present themselves." Hope fluttered in Catherine's chest. "There's considerable work for a man with your skills, I imagine. The city is growing rapidly. So it seems." He set down his cup and met her gaze directly. "Catherine, there's something I should tell you." The seriousness in his tone alarmed her. "What is it?" "I visited the courthouse today, asked some questions about your cousins and their attorney." Catherine blinked in surprise. "Why would you do that?" "Concern, I suppose." He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. "Their lawyer, Whitmore, has a reputation for underhanded tactics. And your cousins apparently have several influential friends here, men who have invested in mining ventures with them and would benefit from having allies controlling a successful business like this store." Mr. Peterson mentioned they have connections. Catherine frowned. "Do you think they might try something beyond legal challenges?" "I think it would be unwise to underestimate what some men will do for money." Sam's expression was grave. "I don't like the thought of you facing them alone." The implications of his concern warmed her even as it heightened her anxiety. "I appreciate your worry, Sam, but what can I do? This is my inheritance. I won't surrender it without a fight." "I never suggested you should." He hesitated, then added quietly, "But you might consider accepting help." "From you?" The question came out more sharply than she intended. A flash of hurt crossed his features. "Is that so objectionable?" "No, that's not what I meant." Catherine set her cup down with a nervous clatter. "But you've already done so much, and you must have your own plans, your own life to build. I can't ask you to involve yourself in my troubles." "You didn't ask. I'm offering." Sam rose and moved to the window, looking out at the darkening street below. "The truth is, Catherine, I haven't had much purpose since leaving Texas, just drifting, taking whatever work came along." He turned back to face her. "Until I found you with that broken wagon in the mountains." The intensity in his gaze made her heart race. "What are you saying, Sam?" He crossed the room and knelt before her chair, taking her hands in his. "I'm saying that meeting you changed something for me, that I care what happens to you." His voice dropped lower. "That the thought of riding away and never seeing you again feels wrong in ways I can't explain." Catherine stared at their joined hands, emotions swirling through her: hope, fear, confusion, and something deeper she wasn't ready to name. "We've known each other less than a week," she whispered. "I know." His thumbs traced gentle circles on her wrists. "It doesn't make rational sense. But out here, life moves differently. People recognize what matters more quickly because tomorrow isn't guaranteed." Catherine looked up, meeting his earnest gaze. "And I matter to you more than I expected, more than is probably wise." A rueful smile touched his lips. "I'm not proposing marriage, Catherine. I'm just asking if I can stay, help you secure your inheritance, see where this connection between us might lead." The sincerity in his voice touched something deep within her. Whatever this was between them had grown quickly, but felt more genuine than any courtship she'd experienced in Boston. "Yes," she said simply, "I'd like that." The relief and joy that transformed his face made her breath catch. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Sam leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers, a gentle, questioning kiss that nevertheless sent warmth coursing through her. When they parted, Catherine felt as though something fundamental had shifted in her world. "What happens now?" she asked softly. "Now," Sam said, rising and pulling her to her feet, "we prepare to face your cousins, together." The following days passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Catherine reopened the store with Sam's help, determined to demonstrate her capability as a businesswoman before the hearing. Mrs. Findlay spread word of the reopening. and customers began returning, some out of curiosity about William Nelson's Eastern niece, others out of genuine need for the goods only Nelsons provided. Sam proved an unexpected asset to the business. His practical knowledge and easy manner with the rougher customers complemented Catherine's organizational skills and eye for merchandise. Together, they sorted inventory, reorganized displays, and began implementing Catherine's plans for expansion. Their personal relationship developed alongside their business partnership. Sam found lodging nearby but spent most days at the store. Their evenings often ended with quiet conversations in Catherine's parlor, sharing their pasts and cautiously exploring their growing feelings. 5 days after Catherine's arrival in Sacramento, the meeting with her cousins took place in Mr. Peterson's office. Thomas and Edgar Nelson proved to be everything she'd feared: condescending, dismissive, and utterly convinced of their right to their uncle's business despite his explicit wishes. "Be reasonable, Cousin Catherine," Thomas said, his tone falsely conciliatory. "A young, unmarried woman cannot possibly manage an enterprise of this nature. Sacramento is no place for a lady alone. Yet here I am," Catherine replied coolly, "already managing quite successfully." Edgar sneered. "For less than a week. With assistance, we understand." His gaze flickered to Sam, who stood silently beside Catherine's chair. "Your employee seems rather new to the business." "Mr. Sutton is my business partner," Catherine stated firmly, the decision made in that moment. She felt Sam's surprise but continued without hesitation. "His expertise has already proven invaluable." Thomas leaned forward, dropping all pretense of politeness. Uncle William was clearly not in his right mind when he made that will. No sane man would leave his life's work to a distant niece over his own nephews. Judge Wilson will see reason. "Your uncle's mental competence was well documented," Mr. Peterson interjected, "as was his dissatisfaction with your business practices, gentlemen. Shall I read from his letters detailing his concerns about your gambling debts and questionable investments?" The meeting deteriorated rapidly after that, ending with threats thinly veiled as legal warnings. As they departed, Edgar paused at the door, his expression darkening. "This isn't over, cousin. Sacramento has ways of dealing with outsiders who don't know their place." When they were gone, Catherine released a shaky breath. "That went about as expected." "Worse," Peterson said grimly, "they're desperate." "The rumors about their financial troubles appear to be true." Sam, who had remained silent throughout most of the exchange, finally spoke. "Did you mean what you said about a partnership?" Catherine met his gaze steadily. "I did, if you're willing." A slow smile spread across his face. "More than willing," Peterson cleared his throat. "While I appreciate romantic gestures, Miss Nelson, a formal business partnership requires proper documentation, especially given your current legal challenges." "Then let's make it official," Catherine said decisively. "Draw up the papers, Mr. Peterson. Sam has earned his place in this business, and having a male partner may actually strengthen my position before Judge Wilson, practical as that may be." That evening, Catherine and Sam celebrated their new partnership with dinner at Sacramento's finest restaurant. Dressed in her best gown and feeling more confident than she had since arriving, Catherine found herself genuinely enjoying the experience despite the curious glances from other diners. "To Nelson and Sutton General Merchandise," Sam proposed, raising his glass. Catherine clinked her glass against his. "I think we should keep it as Nelson's. My uncle built that name and reputation. Besides, and Sutton is rather a mouthful." "As you wish, partner." His eyes held hers, warm with something more than business regard. "Though I hope someday you might consider a different arrangement that would put our names together more permanently." Catherine felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Samuel Sutton, are you being presumptuous?" "Merely optimistic." He took her hand across the table. "Is that so terrible?" "Not terrible," she admitted. "Just unexpected. A week ago I was alone with a broken wagon, certain my future depended solely on claiming my uncle's store. Now I'm beginning to think perhaps the broken wheel was a stroke of fortune rather than misfortune." Their moment was interrupted by the arrival of their food. As they ate, Catherine noticed two men watching them from across the restaurant, well-dressed gentlemen conversing in low tones while occasionally glancing their way. "Don't look now," she murmured, "but I believe we're being observed." Sam casually shifted position to view the men. His expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "Associates of your cousins, I'd wager. I recognize one from the mining exchange. Should we be concerned?" "Vigilant," Sam corrected. "Your cousins strike me as men who might try intimidation before accepting defeat." His assessment proved accurate sooner than either expected. The following morning, they arrived at the store to find the front window shattered, a brick lying amid broken glass on the floor inside. Tied to the brick was a crude note, "Leave now or worse will come." "Subtle," Sam remarked dryly as Catherine surveyed the damage. She picked up the note, her hands trembling slightly despite her determined expression. "They think this will frighten me away. It might frighten away customers," Sam pointed out, "which would serve their purpose just as well." They reported the vandalism to the sheriff, though he seemed disinclined to investigate thoroughly. "Probably just miners blowing off steam," he suggested, despite the explicit note. "Or perhaps something more deliberate," Sam countered, his tone causing the sheriff to look at him more carefully. "You making accusations, mister? Just observations." Sam met his gaze steadily. "Interesting timing, wouldn't you say? Right before Miss Nelson's hearing about her inheritance." The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "I'd be careful about spreading unfounded suspicions if I were you." Sacramento don't take kindly to troublemakers. After he left, Catherine and Sam worked together to clean up the broken glass and arrange for a new window. By midday, the store was open for business, though Catherine noticed fewer customers than previous days. "They're trying to isolate us," Sam said that evening as they reviewed the day's meager sales. "Turn the town against the outsiders." Catherine set down her pencil with a sigh. "It appears to be working, for now," Sam agreed. "But Sacramento is full of newcomers, people who came for gold or opportunity. Your cousins can't intimidate everyone." "Perhaps not, but they only need to discourage enough customers to make the business fail." Catherine rubbed her temples, feeling the weight of the day's events. "The hearing is still 3 days away." Sam reached across the desk and took her hand. "We'll weather this, Catherine, I promise you." His confidence bolstered her, but the following days proved increasingly difficult. Though no further vandalism occurred, subtle pressure mounted. Suppliers delayed deliveries. Regular customers found excuses not to visit the store. Even Mrs. Findlay reported hearing rumors questioning Catherine's character and Sam's intentions. "They're saying unseemly things," the older woman confided, her disapproval clear. "About a single woman living above her store with a male partner visiting at all hours." "That's ridiculous," Catherine protested. "Sam has his own lodgings. Doesn't matter what's true, miss, only what folks believe." Mrs. Findlay patted her hand sympathetically. "Perhaps Mr. Sutton should keep his distance until after the hearing." Catherine rejected the suggestion outright, but the damage to her reputation concerned her deeply. In Boston, such rumors would have been disastrous. She hoped Sacramento's frontier attitudes might be more forgiving, but the declining business suggested otherwise. The night before the hearing, Catherine and Sam worked late finalizing their presentation for Judge Wilson. They had prepared detailed accounts showing the store's profitability under their brief management and testimonials from satisfied customers who had defied the subtle pressure to shop elsewhere. "It's a solid case," Sam assured her as they gathered their papers. "Your uncle's will was clear, and we've demonstrated your capability to continue his legacy." Catherine nodded, though anxiety knotted her stomach. "I should try to get some rest." Sam rose to leave but paused at the door to the stairs. "Catherine, whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know these past days have been the most purposeful I've experienced since leaving Texas. Working alongside you, seeing your determination, it's reminded me what it means to build something worthwhile." His sincerity touched her deeply. "For me as well, Sam." She crossed to him, propriety momentarily forgotten as she placed her hands on his chest. "Whatever the judge decides, I'm grateful you fixed my wagon that day." Best wheel I ever repaired, he murmured, leaning down to kiss her gently. Get some sleep. Tomorrow will be challenging enough without exhaustion. After he left, Catherine prepared for bed with mixed emotions. The prospect of losing her inheritance weighed heavily, but the unexpected gift of Sam's presence in her life offered counterbalancing hope. Whatever tomorrow brought, she would not face it alone. She had just extinguished her lamp when a noise from downstairs caught her attention, a faint scratching at the store's rear door. Catherine froze, listening intently. The sound came again, followed by the distinct creak of the door opening. Someone had entered the store, heart pounding. Catherine retrieved her father's pistol from the bedside drawer. She moved silently to her bedroom door, straining to hear further movements below. The shuffle of multiple footsteps confirmed her fears: intruders, not just a single thief. Carefully, she crept toward the top of the stairs, pistol clutched tightly in her trembling hand. A flare of light appeared below as someone lit a lamp. In its glow, Catherine could make out 3 figures moving purposefully through the store. Their hushed voices reached her ears. Spread it around good, make sure it'll catch quick. What about the woman upstairs? Just enough to scare her off. Fire department'll respond before it reaches the apartment. With sickening clarity, Catherine realized their intent: they were planning to set fire to the store. The night before her hearing, when even a minor fire would devastate her chances of proving her business competence, she had to act immediately. Raising the pistol, she called out with more courage than she felt, "I have a gun and I know how to use it. Leave now or I'll shoot." The intruders froze, then scrambled for cover behind counters and shelves. "You're making a mistake, Miss Nelson," one called back, a voice she recognized as belonging to Edgar's friend from the restaurant. "Just a little insurance fire. No one needs to get hurt. Get out of my store." Catherine demanded, descending one step to demonstrate her resolve. A shot rang out, splintering the banister inches from her hand. Catherine ducked back, heart racing. They were armed and clearly willing to use their weapons. "That was a warning," the man shouted. "Next one won't miss. Be sensible and go back upstairs while we finish our business." Trapped and outgunned, Catherine retreated to her apartment, mind racing for a solution. The window overlooking the street was her only escape route, but jumping from the second floor would likely result in serious injury. As she weighed her limited options, the smell of lamp oil and smoke began to permeate the apartment. They had started the fire despite her awareness of their presence. Soon, the entire building would be ablaze. Catherine threw open the window and leaned out, scanning the darkened street for any sign of help. "Fire!" she screamed. "Help! Fire at Nelson's store!" Lights appeared in windows across the street as her cries roused neighboring shopkeepers. In the distance, she heard a shout and the sound of running footsteps. The smoke was growing thicker, stinging her eyes and making it difficult to breathe. The choice was becoming stark: risk the jump or face the flames. As she climbed onto the windowsill, preparing to lower herself as far as possible before dropping, a familiar voice called from below. "Catherine, wait." Sam stood in the street, arms outstretched. "Jump, I'll catch you." Without hesitation, Catherine pushed away from the building, tumbling through the air toward his waiting arms. The impact knocked them both to the ground, but Sam had broken her fall, taking the brunt of it himself. "Are you hurt?" he asked urgently, helping her to her feet. "No, but the store, they're burning it deliberately." Sam's expression hardened as he looked toward the building, where flames were now visible through the lower windows. "Who?" "Edgar's friends, 3 of them." Catherine clutched his arm. "They shot at me when I tried to stop them." People were emerging from nearby buildings, some already forming a bucket line from the nearest water pump. In the distance, bells signaled the fire brigade's response. "Stay here," Sam instructed, moving toward the front of the store. "Sam, no, they're armed." He paused only long enough to press a quick kiss to her forehead. "Trust me." Before she could protest further, he disappeared around the corner of the building. Catherine watched in horror as the flames grew higher, consuming the business she had traveled so far to claim. The next moments passed in a blur of smoke, shouting, and frantic activity as the community mobilized against the fire. The brigade arrived with their pump wagon, directing the volunteer bucket line with practiced efficiency. Suddenly, commotion erupted from the alley beside the store. 3 men burst onto the street, coughing and stumbling. Behind them came Sam, herding them forward with a shotgun Catherine recognized from the store's inventory. These men were seen leaving the building just as the fire started, Sam announced loudly to the gathering crowd. And Miss Nelson can identify them as the arsonists. The sheriff, who had arrived with the fire brigade, approached with a skeptical expression. "That's a serious accusation, Sutton, one easily proven," Sam replied evenly. "They'll have lamp oil on their hands and clothes." And Miss Nelson heard them planning it before they shot at her. The crowd's murmurs turned hostile toward the 3 men, who exchanged nervous glances. "It was just business," one protested. "Edgar Nelson paid us to scare her off, not hurt anyone." The admission sent a ripple of shock through the onlookers. The sheriff's demeanor shifted as he realized the political winds had changed. "Arrest them," he ordered his deputy. "Arson and attempted murder," he turned to Catherine. "You'll need to make a formal statement, Miss Nelson." As the prisoners were led away, Catherine finally allowed herself to look fully at her burning inheritance. The fire brigade was making progress, but the damage was extensive. The ground floor where the store operated would be largely destroyed, though the structure itself might be saved. Sam appeared at her side, soot-streaked but unharmed. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "We'll rebuild, Catherine, I promise." She leaned against him, exhaustion and delayed shock washing over her. "How did you happen to be here? It's the middle of the night." "I had a feeling your cousins might try something before the hearing." He slipped an arm around her waist, supporting her. "Decided to keep watch from across the street. Good thing I did." As dawn broke over Sacramento, the fire was finally extinguished. The store's interior was gutted, but the structural walls in Catherine's apartment had been saved, though smoke damage was extensive. Mr. Peterson arrived as Catherine and Sam were surveying the destruction. "My God," he exclaimed, taking in the scene. "Are you all right, Miss Nelson?" Catherine nodded wearily. "Thanks to Sam." "The hearing," Peterson began, "will proceed as scheduled," Catherine interrupted firmly. "This changes nothing. In fact, it strengthens our case by demonstrating how far my cousins will go to seize what isn't theirs." Peterson looked doubtful. "Judge Wilson will want to see a viable business, not a burned-out shell." "Then we'll show him our plans for rebuilding," Sam interjected. "Catherine's determination in the face of such tactics will only prove her worthiness to continue her uncle's legacy." The lawyer studied them both thoughtfully before nodding. "I'll revise our presentation accordingly. Meet me at the courthouse at 10 o'clock. After he left, Catherine turned to Sam, overwhelmed by the challenges ahead. "How can we possibly convince the judge now? The store is destroyed." "We have no inventory, no means to demonstrate my business acumen." Sam took her hands in his. "We have something more important proof of your cousin's criminal actions to prevent you from succeeding, and we have this." He gestured to the gathering of townspeople who had helped fight the fire, many now offering assistance with cleanup. A community that recognizes injustice when they see it. His confidence bolstered her own. "You're right, this isn't over yet." They spent the remaining hours before the hearing changing into the only clean clothes Catherine had left saved from the fire by being in her traveling trunk and preparing their revised presentation with Peterson. The Sacramento courthouse was crowded when they arrived. News of the arson had spread quickly, drawing curious onlookers and supporters. Catherine was touched to see Mrs. Findlay and several customers among those waiting. Thomas and Edgar Nelson sat with their attorney at one table, their expressions a mixture of shock and poorly concealed panic as Catherine and Sam entered. Clearly, they hadn't expected their hired men to implicate them so quickly. Judge Wilson, a stern-faced man with a reputation for fairness despite his traditional views, called the hearing to order promptly. "This court will now consider the petition of Thomas and Edgar Nelson challenging the will of William Nelson regarding the bequest of Nelson's general merchandise to Catherine Nelson." He peered over his spectacles at the fire-damaged documents before him. "I understand there was an incident last night at the property in question." "Yes, Your Honor," Peterson replied, rising. "A deliberately set fire for which 3 men have been arrested. They have signed statements implicating the petitioners in arranging the arson." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Herbert Whitmore, the Nelsons' attorney, leapt to his feet. "These are unsubstantiated allegations, Your Honor. My clients categorically deny any involvement." "The sheriff's report indicates otherwise," Judge Wilson stated dryly. "But that is a criminal matter for another proceeding. Our concern today is the validity of William Nelson's will and the capability of Catherine Nelson to fulfill his intentions regarding his business." The hearing proceeded with Whitmore arguing that Catherine, as an unmarried woman with no business experience, could not possibly manage a frontier mercantile successfully. He pointed to the fire damage as evidence of her inability to protect the property. When Peterson's turn came, he presented Catherine's Boston background, her experience with her father's accounts, and her quick grasp of the store's operations in the short time since her arrival. Then he called Catherine herself to testify. Taking the stand, Catherine felt a moment of trepidation as all eyes turned to her. Then she caught Sam's encouraging nod from his seat behind Peterson, and her resolve strengthened. "Miss Nelson," Judge Wilson addressed her directly, "your cousins contend that, as a woman alone, you cannot effectively run a business of this nature in a frontier town. How do you respond?" Catherine met his gaze steadily. "Your Honor, I am not alone. I have formed a business partnership with Samuel Sutton, whose experience and abilities complement my own. Together, we had already begun implementing improvements to the store before last night's criminal attack. And this partnership, it is a formal arrangement. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Peterson has drawn up the legal documents which we signed yesterday." She straightened her shoulders. "But more importantly, my uncle believed in my capabilities. He taught me through correspondence for years, preparing me to eventually join him. His death came before that plan could be realized, but his confidence in me was explicit in his will." Judge Wilson studied her thoughtfully. "And the fire, how do you intend to recover from such a setback?" "With determination and community support, Your Honor. Already, several local merchants have offered assistance with rebuilding. We have secured temporary premises to resume limited operations while repairs are completed. The business ledgers were stored in a fireproof safe, so our accounts remain intact." The judge's eyebrows rose slightly, impressed despite himself. "And this partnership with Mr. Sutton, it was formed before or after the difficulties began with your cousins?" "After I arrived in Sacramento, but before the vandalism and arson, Your Honor. Mr. Sutton assisted me during my journey when my wagon broke down in the mountains. His character and capabilities were evident from our first meeting." The questioning continued, with Catherine responding clearly and confidently to each point. When she was finally dismissed from the stand, she returned to her seat feeling cautiously optimistic. Sam was called next, testifying about his background in Texas ranching and his observations of Catherine's business acumen. He spoke with a straightforward honesty that seemed to impress the judge, particularly when describing their plans for rebuilding. After both sides presented their final arguments, Judge Wilson called a brief recess to consider his decision. Catherine and Sam waited anxiously in the courthouse corridor. "You were magnificent," Sam told her quietly. "Clear-headed and determined, just like when I found you with that broken wheel." Catherine smiled at the memory that now seemed so distant. "I was rather a mess that day, as I recall." "Externally, perhaps, but I saw the steel beneath." He took her hand, public propriety momentarily forgotten. "Whatever the judge decides, Catherine, I want you to know court is reconvening," Peterson interrupted, appearing at their side. "Judge Wilson has reached his decision." They returned to the courtroom, where a hush fell as the judge took his seat. Thomas and Edgar looked pale but still confident in their attorney's abilities and the town's traditional values. "Having considered the evidence and testimony presented," Judge Wilson began, "this court finds the will of William Nelson to be valid in all respects. His intention to bequeath his business and property to his niece, Catherine Nelson, was clearly expressed and executed with sound mind. Catherine felt Sam's hand squeeze hers under the table as relief washed over her. Furthermore, the judge continued, Miss Nelson has demonstrated remarkable resourcefulness and business acumen in the face of extraordinary challenges, including criminal interference with her inheritance. Her formation of a partnership with Mr. Sutton shows prudent judgment and practical consideration of frontier realities. He turned a stern gaze toward Thomas and Edgar. The petition to invalidate the will is denied. Nelson's general merchandise and all associated property are confirmed as the lawful inheritance of Catherine Nelson, to be managed in partnership with Samuel Sutton as per their formal agreement. The courtroom erupted in muted conversation. Thomas stormed out immediately, but Edgar lingered to cast a venomous glare at Catherine before following his brother. "Congratulations, Miss Nelson," Judge Wilson added, gathering his papers. "Your uncle would be proud of your perseverance." Outside the courthouse, well-wishers surrounded them, Mrs. Findlay, customers, even shopkeepers who had initially kept their distance under the Nelsons' influence. "The community is with you now," Peterson observed as they walked back toward the damaged store. "Your cousin's tactics backfired spectacularly. They'll likely face criminal charges once the investigation concludes." "What matters now is rebuilding," Catherine said, her mind already racing with plans. "We need to secure temporary premises immediately and salvage whatever inventory survived." Sam watched her with a mixture of admiration and amusement. "Always focused on the next challenge. That's what I love about you." The words hung in the air between them, spoken so naturally that Sam himself seemed surprised by them. Catherine's steps faltered as she turned to look at him. "What did you say?" A slow smile spread across his face as he held her gaze. "I said I love you, Catherine Nelson. Probably have since you stood beside that broken wagon, determined to reach Sacramento despite everything." In the middle of the busy street, with townspeople bustling around them and the smell of smoke still clinging to her clothes, Catherine felt a surge of joy so profound it momentarily took her breath away. "I love you too," she replied simply, "though I believe I didn't realize it until this moment." Peterson cleared his throat pointedly. "Perhaps this conversation might continue somewhere more private," he suggested, nodding toward the curious onlookers who had slowed to watch the exchange. Catherine laughed, a release of tension and happiness combined. "You're right, Mr. Peterson. We have a business to rebuild, after all." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. With the community now firmly behind them, Catherine and Sam secured temporary premises 2 doors down from their damaged building and quickly resumed operations on a limited scale. Contractors were hired to repair the original store, with improvements Catherine had envisioned from the start. Sam proved invaluable not only in the physical labor of recovery, but in negotiating with suppliers and managing the rougher elements of their clientele. His reputation grew as a fair but no-nonsense businessman, while Catherine's eye for quality merchandise and meticulous bookkeeping ensured their financial stability despite the setbacks. Thomas and Edgar Nelson faced trial for their role in the arson plot and were convicted based on their hired men's testimony. Their sentencing, significant fines, and expulsion from the Merchants Association effectively ended their influence in Sacramento business circles. Through it all, Catherine and Sam's personal relationship deepened alongside their business partnership. They maintained separate residences for propriety's sake, but few in town doubted the direction of their attachment. 2 months after the fire, with reconstruction of the original store nearing completion, Sam took Catherine for a Sunday afternoon ride into the countryside surrounding Sacramento. They stopped at a picturesque spot overlooking the American River, spreading a blanket for a simple picnic. "It's beautiful here," Catherine observed, watching sunlight dance on the flowing water below. "So different from the mountains where we met, yet equally magnificent." Sam nodded, unusually quiet as he arranged their meal. When he finally spoke, his voice held an uncharacteristic note of uncertainty. "Catherine, there's something I've been wanting to discuss with you." She turned to find him holding a small box, his expression a mixture of hope and nervousness that made her heart skip. "I had planned an eloquent speech," he continued, "about how meeting you changed everything for me, how a broken wagon wheel led to the greatest happiness I've known." He opened the box, revealing a delicate gold ring set with a small but perfect diamond. "But the simple truth is, I love you. I want to build a life with you, not just a business." Tears welled in Catherine's eyes as he took her hand. "Catherine Nelson, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes," she whispered, not trusting her voice for more. "Yes, Sam." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a depth of feeling that left them both breathless. "It's not a grand ring," he apologized when they finally parted. "But the business is just recovering," and Catherine pressed her fingers to his lips, silencing him. "It's perfect. I don't need grandeur, Sam, I just need you." They were married 3 weeks later in Sacramento's newly built church with Mrs. Find lay sniffling proudly in the front pew, and Mr. Peterson giving the bride away. The reconstructed Nelson's General Merchandise, its sign now subtly modified to Nelson and Sutton's General Merchandise, despite Catherine's earlier objections, closed for the day, a first in its long history. The small reception was held in their newly renovated apartment above the store, where they would make their home together. As friends and well-wishers celebrated around them, Sam drew Catherine to a quiet corner. "Happy?" he asked, his arm secure around her waist. "Completely," she assured him, leaning into his embrace. "Though I still can't quite believe how we came to this moment," Sam smiled, brushing a kiss against her temple. "A broken wheel in the mountains, sometimes fate needs a helping hand." "Or a skilled one," Catherine corrected, turning to face him fully. "I'm very glad you knew how to fix wagons, Mr. Sutton, and I'm very glad yours broke, Mrs. Sutton." He pulled her closer, his voice dropping to a whisper meant only for her. "Best repair I ever made." 5 years later, Catherine stood at the counter of Nelson and Sutton's General Merchandise, now the largest and most successful store in Sacramento, calculating a customer's purchase. The store had expanded twice since those early days, now occupying the original building plus the adjacent property. "That will be $4.73, she told the miner, who counted out coins from a leather pouch. "Appreciate the fair prices, Mrs. Sutton," he said, gathering his supplies. "Some places see gold dust and double their rates. We believe in building relationships, not just making sales," Catherine replied with the philosophy that had guided their business growth. As the customer departed, the door opened again to admit Sam, their 3-year-old son William perched on his shoulders and their 1-year-old daughter Alina in his arms. "Mama," William called excitedly. "Papa showed us the new horses at the livery." Catherine smiled, coming around the counter to greet her family. "Did he now, and were they very fine horses?" "The finest," Sam confirmed, setting William down and transferring Alina to Catherine's waiting arms. The little girl immediately grabbed for her mother's hairpins, a favorite game. The store was quieter than usual that afternoon, with their 2 shop assistants handling the few customers who entered. Catherine and Sam had built a trusted staff over the years, allowing them more time with their growing family. "Mr. Peterson dropped by earlier," Catherine told Sam as they moved toward the back office. "The papers for the Silver Lake property are ready. He says it's the finest parcel he's seen in years." Sam's expression brightened. "Good timing. I received confirmation from the bank that our loan was approved." The Silver Lake property represented their newest venture, 100 acres of prime land outside Sacramento, where Sam planned to establish a cattle operation while Catherine continued overseeing the store. It was a return to his roots in many ways, a chance to build something that combined both their talents. "We should celebrate," Catherine suggested, bouncing Alina gently as the child began to fuss. "Perhaps dinner at Maxwell's tonight," Mrs. Findlay said she'd watch the children. Sam agreed, and that evening found them at Sacramento's most elegant restaurant, toasting their new venture and the journey that had brought them to this point. "Did you ever imagine this future?" Catherine asked, "when you found me stranded in the mountains?" Sam considered the question thoughtfully. Not specifically, but I knew there was something special about the determined woman trying to fix her own wagon wheel with nothing but stubbornness. I was making a terrible mess of it, Catherine admitted with a laugh. You were magnificent, Sam countered, reaching across the table for her hand. Still are. Their conversation drifted to plans for the Silver Lake property, the house they would build for weekend retreats, the cattle operations Sam would develop, the future they envisioned for their children with room to grow and explore. It's strange to think, Catherine mused as they walked home under a canopy of stars reminiscent of those early nights on the trail, how differently everything might have turned out if my wheel hadn't broken that day. Sam drew her close against the evening chill. I like to think I'd have found you somehow, that some paths are meant to cross one way or another. A romantic notion for a practical cowboy, she teased gently. You've changed me, he acknowledged with a smile, though I maintain it was purely practical to stop and help a stranded traveler. Just good trail etiquette. Is that all it was? Catherine asked, her tone playful. Trail etiquette. Sam paused their walk, turning to face her under the lamplight. After 5 years of marriage, he still looked at her with the same warmth that had first drawn her to him. No, he said softly. It was the best decision I ever made. Every morning I wake up beside you, I'm grateful for that broken wheel. Catherine rose on tiptoes to kiss him, there in the middle of Sacramento's Main Street. And I'm grateful for the cowboy who fixed it and followed me down the mountain. Hand in hand, they continued home to their children, and the life they had built together, a journey that had begun with a broken wagon wheel and a promise to follow, leading to destinations neither could have imagined on that fateful day in the Sierra Nevada.